Okay, in this mock exercise, we're going to take a look at cost volume profit. So using CVP analysis to help solve for the unknown. So let's take a look at the question. So this question, they asked there's 4 parts and they've given us some information. And we're going to do the first one together, okay? So here they gave us sales and fixed costs, but they gave us, or we need to solve for the variable cost and the total cost, but they gave us the contribution margin, but we're looking for operating profit. So basically what we've got to figure out is how do we determine some of these unknowns? Okay, so to start with, we need to get a good understanding of the relationship between those factors. So first of all, as a general rule, so it's sales, right, less variable cost to give you contribution margin. So let me just write that down. I'm going to short form it. So I'm going to short form this as S minus VC gives you CM. Now, contribution margin minus fixed cost gives you operating profit. So CM minus FC gives you operating income or operating profit. That's the short form that we're going to use. So this is the formula we're going to use for this example. Now, it's important to also know that contribution margin percent is contribution margin over sales. That's also an important aspect to help us solve this problem as well. Okay, so let's look at the first one. The first one, let's come back to the question again. So the first one, we need to calculate, the first thing we do, we need to calculate the variable cost. Now, how do we do that? Because we're given the contribution margin. So we're going to use these formulas to help us find the unknown. So the first part is, we've got contribution margin percent. This is part, we're answering part A, right? Contribution margin percent equals contribution margin divided by sales. So we know that we've got revenues that was given to us, and contribution margin percent was given to us. So we'll put 30%, or in this case, sorry, it's 60%, equals contribution margin over sales, which in this case is 3,000. So contribution margin equals okay, it's 3,000 times 0.6 gives you, I should know this, right? 1,800. So variable cost, we know, is sales minus variable cost gives you contribution margin. So let's plug in what we know. Sales minus variable cost to give you 1,800. So variable cost must be 1,200. So we know what the variable cost is. That's important. That was one of the unknowns. Okay, and now we have contribution margin. We know that too. Now, what about fixed cost? How do we know, how do we calculate total cost? So we know that total cost equals variable cost plus fixed cost. Variable cost we just calculated, and fixed cost was given to us. The fixed cost is $1,300. And that gives us $2,500 total cost. So let me write this down. So this one we had to calculate to help us find this number, and this is given to us. Okay? Now that we have the fixed cost, which is the total cost, which is also in the question, once we know that, we can figure out our operating income. So operating income, OI, equals sales less total cost. And sales is 3,000 less 2,500 gives me 500. And that 2,500 came from here. Okay? And that's one of the required. So if you look at it, they're asking us to calculate variable costs. Okay? Asking us to calculate total cost and operating profit. Okay, so those are the questions that was asked for part A. Now, let's do part B. So I'll just do another sheet here for part B. So again, we're going to use this equation. And by the way, I forgot to do one thing here. It goes without saying that total cost equals variable cost and fixed cost, right? So these are the key formulas you're going to need. Now, for part B, it's again, they want us to solve for the unknown, but this time the unknowns are different. So let's take a look at the unknowns here. Let's see that for part B, we're given revenues, fixed costs. We're not given variable costs, but we're given total costs. So now we can probably figure that out really quickly, isn't it? And then we're not given the contribution margin percentages and the operating income. So those are the three different unknowns. So let's take a look. So for part B, the first thing we need to do is solve for the variable cost, because that will help us determine the contribution margin percentage. Okay, so the variable cost we know is total cost equals fixed cost plus variable cost. We do know the total cost, don't we? This 4,000 equals the fixed cost was given to us as 2,800 plus variable cost. Variable cost equals 1,200. So that was one of the required. Right? That was one of the required. Now, we've got the variable cost. Can we calculate the contribution margin? Yes, we can. So contribution margin percentage equals sales minus variable cost divided by sales. Because remember, this is contribution margin, isn't it? So let's plug in the formula. We know that sales is 4,000. Variable cost we just calculated to be 1,200 divided by sales. So contribution margin percentage equals 70%. That's one of the required. Okay. Now, how do we calculate operating income? Well, we know operating income equals sales less total cost. And we do have that, don't we? Total cost is 4,000. So sales is 4,000 minus total cost of 4,000 to give you 0 operating profit. Okay? So that helps us with part B. So I'll just write down I put a tick mark beside it to show that that's the unknown that we were required to solve. Okay, so let's look at the next part, part C. So part C, let's look at the equation again, or the question again. We're giving sales, we're given fixed costs, we're asked to calculate variable cost and total cost. But this time, it's different from part A, where they gave us operating profit, but we don't know the contribution margin percentage. So the key to doing these questions is to know the formula, which is what we're going to need. And this formula is important because we need to understand. So what happens, as we talked about in previous videos, is we need to segregate our costs between fixed and variable. And why do we need to do that? It allows us to predict future costs. It allows us to make decisions about pricing, about managing the cost appropriately, or determining how many units we need to sell to either break even or perhaps increase or have a target profit in mind. So we do need these equations to do a lot of these management decision type questions. So this is just an example of that type of question. So let's take a look at the part C. So as I said, sorry, you've got to figure out which of these unknowns you need to solve first. And that's the key to doing these questions, is which unknowns you need to solve first so that you can help solve the other unknowns. So in part C, we are given sales and fixed costs. We're not given variable cost, and we're not given total cost, but we're given operating income. So the best thing for us to do is perhaps we need to calculate total cost, because we're given sales less total cost gives you operating income. Sales is given to us. Total cost is unknown. But operating income is $600. So at least we know what the total cost is, which is $5,400. And that was one of the questions that they asked, right? Now, once total cost is known, you can figure out what the variable cost is, because we do have, so total cost equals variable cost plus fixed cost. We do have the total cost now, $5,400. Variable cost is unknown, but we do have the fixed cost, don't we? And the fixed cost is $900. So variable cost equals $4,500. So that was one of the unknowns. Now, once we've got the variable cost, we can determine the contribution margin percentage. So contribution margin percentage equals sales minus variable cost over sales. Do we know sales? Yes, we do. We've got 4,000 that was given to us. Variable cost we just calculated. So let me just make sure we document the relationship. And then so the sales is 6,000. Apologize. Okay. And then divided by 6,000. So contribution margin percentage is 25%. Okay. So it's really important to understand the relationship. And in fact, to solve this question, you couldn't have solved variable cost without perhaps looking at the total cost. So it's a little bit of judgment here, there's a little bit of thinking involved as well. But the bottom line is that once you get familiarized yourself with the relationship between these accounts, so the ones that I've highlighted here, then you're able to figure out which of the unknowns you need to solve first. Let's look at the final question, part D. And these are the three unknowns that's asked. Looking at part D, the final one, you'll see that this time sales and fixed cost is unknown, but we're given variable cost and total cost. And then the contribution margin is unknown, but the operating income is known. So this is very similar to C, actually, in the way we're going to approach it. So part D, we know that total cost equals variable cost plus fixed cost. Do we know the total cost? That was given to us, wasn't it? 1,600 equals variable cost is 1,000 plus fixed cost. Fixed cost is $600. So that's the first thing we needed to solve. Okay, now, what's next? Well, we've got operating income and we've got total cost. So we can figure out what sales are, right? So we know that sales minus total cost gives you operating income. So sales is the unknown. The total cost, we know it's 1,600. Okay. Equals operating income, which is 2,400. So sales equals 4,000. So that one we had to solve. Okay. Now that we've got sales, we've got variable costs, we can certainly calculate contribution margin. So contribution margin percentages equals sales minus variable cost gives you sales. Sales is 4,000, which we just calculated, didn't we? Minus variable cost, which is 1,000, divided by sales. Contribution margin percentage is 75%. And that was one of the questions they asked us to calculate. So understanding these relationships is key to solving the unknown. So understanding the fact that we have sales minus variable cost gives us contribution margin. Contribution margin percentage is contribution margin divided by sales, or sales minus variable cost gives over sales. Contribution margin minus fixed cost gives you operating income. And of course, total cost is variable cost plus fixed cost. Thank you.